Good evening, everybody, and welcome. We're very excited to have you all here tonight for our Navigating the Job Market in Uncertain Economic Times webinar. My name is Leslie Nichols, and I am the Associate Director of Member Engagement for Sigma Chi Fraternity. And we're very excited to put on this production hosted by our Member Engagement Committee for you tonight. So last month, the Member Engagement Committee announced two new initiatives among several that we have put on for the fraternity, and we're excited to share those with you this evening. So the first of that being the Sigma Chi Career Advantage. So what this is this is Sigma Chi's commitment to joining our members in their professional development journey from undergraduate to their alumni experiences. And that's part of what we'll be doing here tonight. The second bit is the Sigma Chi Learning Consortium. So if you are here, you have found the Sigma Chi Learning Consortium. So this is an online learning platform hosting professional and personal development content produced by the fraternity, by some of our internal and external partners as well. That's available to you all at any time. So the content that we produce will fall under the signature series in three kind of main categories. So the first being our distinguished speakers, where we welcome alumni to share some of their successes. Sigma Chi Today, where we give news and updates on what are the happenings in the fraternity. And then lastly, Career Conversations, where we discuss topics around career development. So that brings us to today, to our Navigating the Job Market in Uncertain Economic Times panel. So as we know, job seekers today are presented with a very challenging and dynamic job market impacted by a variety of factors, and it can be intimidating and challenging. So Sigma Chi has assembled some of our experts to talk to you all today about how to navigate this challenging market in these challenging times. So we'd like to invite you to utilize the comment feature to share where you are joining us from, perhaps your chapter and your graduation year, as well as the Ask a Question feature if you have questions for our panelists throughout. If time allows at the end, we will get over to those. So at this time, I would like to introduce our moderator, Paul. So Paul is a member of our Member Engagement Committee, and he has been a career coach at Vanderbilt University since February 2020. He's currently working with undergraduate STEM students. He is also the coach for Vanderbilt's CASE competition team. So prior to Vandy, Paul spent 1 year supporting master's students at Duke University in the Fuqua School of Business, attaining his undergraduate degree in philosophy at Furman University and a master's of education from the University of Virginia in higher education administration. Paul brings an empathetic approach and analytical approach to his work with students. Welcome, Paul. Please, can you introduce the rest of our panelists?
Definitely. Thank you, Leslie. Appreciate you having me and the rest of the panelists today. We're really excited to have this conversation. So I'll go in order of which I have them and start with Will Dorner. So Will currently leads a team of experts doing research in housing, mortgage markets, and real estate. He brings a combination of practical and academic experiences that include being appointed as commissioner for the Prince George's County Planning Board, serving on the Hyattsville Planning Committee, and working in property appraisal and valuation for both state and county agencies in Florida. He holds both a PhD and master's in economics from Florida State University and a BS in mathematics, economics, and urban studies from Furman University, where he was highly involved in the IOTA New Chapter. Next up, we have Braden Horton. So Braden was initiated at the Kappa Psi chapter at University of Tennessee at Martin, where he was chapter Balfour recipient. He received his bachelor's degree in communications and then completed his master's of education from Vanderbilt University. He has since left Music City for Virginia and is currently enjoying his new mountain home. Braden has held many career and college advising roles and currently supports students at James Madison University as a career advisor. And finally, we have Robbie Kimbrough. So Robbie is a professional recruiter and currently works in the healthcare and special education fields. He has over 13 years experience in recruiting experience recruiting in healthcare, as well as transportation and logistics, working with human resources departments, hiring managers, and prospective job seekers daily. Robbie lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and graduated from the College of Charleston, where he also serves as a chapter advisor. He also co-chairs the Sigma Chi Officer Training Academy and serves as facilitator for KLTW. So welcome, panelists. We're really excited to have you all. And we'll go ahead and jump right into the first question that we have for you. So in no particular order, anyone's welcome to jump in first, but please do tell us more about your past and current involvements with Sigma Chi.
Go ahead, Will.
All right. Whichever you're going to jump in there, Robbie. Yeah. So I got into Sigma Chi sophomore year of undergrad. I was not sure if I wanted to join a fraternity and had kind of a bad impression of some of the experiences because when I was in high school and kind of growing up, it was a really different scene where I was at, where it was kind of like Animal House kind of style. And that just didn't leave me a good impression of fraternities. But for Sigma Chi, when I was on my undergrad campus, it was just very different. I lived on the hall where we had a number of brothers who were kind of attached to there. I would go out and I figured that these are the people I was hanging out with already. We were doing a lot of sort of social and philanthropic kind of stuff that I would just overlap with them. And that drew me to the fraternity. And I became the Pledge Class president, ended up taking on other roles in the fraternity. And it was just really kind of lifelong friendships that I made early on that drew me to the fraternity.
I'll jump in there. So I got involved with the fraternity as a freshman, and I think it really kicked in when I had the opportunity to go to a workshop between my freshman and sophomore year when our proconsul couldn't go, and I got to fill in his place. So I got the opportunity to go to workshop 3 times as an undergrad and also attend Horizons. And I feel like I got a lot of great experience programs that really prepared me not only as an officer, in the fraternity, but really set me up in a position to succeed, into my life post-college and into my career. So I've been very thankful of that and appreciative and really done everything I can to try to give back to the fraternity because of what I was able to get as an undergrad. As Paul said in the introduction, I am a chapter advisor currently. I was a past Grand Praetor for South Carolina. I've been a facilitator for several years, and I'm currently the co-chair of OTA. Just enjoy the opportunity to work with other members, alumni, and you undergrads.
Hey there. So I got involved in Sigma Chi kind of my freshman year of college, wanted to go through Rush, just a good way to go out and make friends. Never really had the money to join until I saved up and actually pledged my junior year. And so with that was recruitment chair, historian, moved on and continued involvement within the chapter alumni board, became a Ritual peer, sat as a graduate member for the Sigma Chi Leadership Institute board and their diversity and inclusion committee, and facilitated a couple other of recruitment workshops. I got involved a little bit with the UVA chapter when I lived in Charlottesville, but have left them behind after I moved again. So.
Awesome. Thank you all. It's really great to hear the diverse range of experiences as well as that growth. And we'll hear a little bit more about that growth later on. But Robbie, we'll start with you for this next question, diving into the main content here. So what are the major factors influencing the job market right now, if you were to be able to pick one or a few? And what are the projections for the future, if you have some?
Yeah, I think that, I was looking at this and I think this is a really loaded question because it's very different across different industries. I can speak generalities. A lot of companies and a lot of industries are looking at, a presumed coming recession. So that you've seen a lot of layoffs with a lot of the big corporate companies here this year. And I think that in contrast to, the beginning, first quarter or so of 2022 to the first quarter of 2023, you've seen a big flip from it being a candidate market to an employer market. And I think that's going to be the biggest change here recently and what you're going to be looking at going forward, at least for the next year, foreseeable future, is that companies are going to be able to be more selective, and they're not necessarily out there starved for the applicants like they were, a year or so ago.
Yeah, I would have to absolutely agree with that. Seeing it from the college perspective of working with the students who are, applying to these jobs and working with the employers who are reviewing these applications, there's just kind of a little bit of oversaturation in a lot of industries. And so really not having factors that can make your materials stand out makes it really difficult to stand up to some competition, as you'll be fighting with people who potentially have been in the industry for longer than you have.
Yeah, I'm on the government side, so a lot of the stuff I see is public, in the public sector, both federal and then kind of at a local level, where I serve for a local kind of state, county by county agency, and in both the federal and sort of the more local government levels, it's sort of the same deal. Where when the private sector is kind of clawing back a little bit on some of the jobs that they're seeing, we're not getting what we call FTEs, or full-time equivalent, kind of like lines for people to hire on. Those just kind of going away. There's not as much certainty on there. And if you want to be in the government, if you're at a local level, property taxes are going to be a big kind of question mark going forward. That's what finances a lot of local governments. And if housing market starts to kind of turn down a little bit, there's going to be some cutbacks in terms of where they're spending and how they're hiring and local kind of public aspects. At least for right now, the federal government is trying to sort of orient itself to the workforce in some ways. So there's a big push to get younger folks in the jobs and get them opportunities. So that's been some of the things that we've been doing, at least in my agency, in terms of trying to figure out how do we build up the workforce at a more earlier kind of stage, instead of waiting until it's later and trying to train people. And I think that's actually probably something that folks in the fraternity actually have an advantage on, because at Balfour, you go through a lot of trainings that are professional oriented. There's a lot of opportunities in the fraternity at an undergrad level to gain skills that are really useful. So you're going to be coming in at an advantage, potentially already having job skills that are transferable or relatable in different professions that will hopefully kind of set you aside from the others that might be in the job market.
It's all really great tips. Thank you all for sharing. And if we're able to project the future, I think it would be a little bit easier on all of us. So thanks for sharing a little insights there. All right, so Braden, we'll start with you for this next question here, and then we'll open it up for the rest of the panelists. Are there any trends in specific industries job seekers should be aware of? I think you might still be on mute.
Yep, that's on me. I mostly work with students and employers within the kind of tech, mathematics, science industries like that. And, what I see right now is, there's a little bit of a scare within the tech industry because of the recent layoffs. And the tech industry is so expansive. So really finding your niche within that tech industry is where you can make yourself marketable. And what a lot of our faculty is trying to engage around is learning further knowledge of kind of cloud computing and any sort of knowledge of AI technologies is where they're seeing more and more demand for those jobs. So I think really taking a look at those two industries as kind of on the uprise right now.
Yeah, for me, I do a lot of research at the federal level. So I have pretty skill specific kind of positions that I advertise for. Folks come in with like master's degrees or PhDs, and everyone in there is like tech oriented. Like before in past years, like they would have one programming language or one software that people would be really good with. And then now people are picking up SQL and Python and some of the cloud languages that, to be frank, the government really is kind of behind on. We haven't adopted a lot of those things. So to me, it's been very impressive seeing the backgrounds that we're getting on applications as people are moving more towards sort of IT focused kind of backgrounds, because they have just a broad skill set and they're extremely competitive, and the government just hasn't really caught up in some ways. But that's still a really good signal for candidates when we're coming in, because it's people who are thinking ahead and who are kind of getting these certifications and these trainings ahead of time. So when we hopefully do start moving a lot more to the virtual kind of environment, that they'll be ready. And one of the big things that we're doing because of COVID, the trend for us has just been remote. So I'm at home right now. I go in once a week. Some government agencies are 100% remote. So that's going to be, I think, a big kind of question mark going forward is, are we going to continue this trend of remote work and flexibilities, or is it going to be kind of going back to the in-person office kind of environments? And it's uncertain. There's going to be different industries that I think are going to go different ways on that. But being able to adapt and finding jobs in what suits you best is going to be important as you're looking around.
Yeah, I'll actually add on to what Will was saying as far as the virtual environment. Don't really know where that's going to go because that is heavily sought after, being able to work from home. What I have been seeing in my industry is that there is a lot of demand coming from the candidates to work from home, and a lot of employers, and I can speak specifically to schools, but other industries as well that my potential candidates are working in outside of the schools in healthcare. They are really a lot of candidates pushing for that work from home. And a lot of the companies are really pushing back, saying, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying, where it's turning into more of an employer sided workforce or career market, that they're kind of saying, hey, we saw maybe a little more productivity, or we like having our teams here in person. And they're really kind of putting up the defenses and putting up the wall. The candidates who are pretty staunch, saying, I want something from home. And they're really trying to focus on bringing people back in. I know that's not every industry, but it's certainly what I'm seeing. I have candidates, I'm posting jobs and I'm talking to people all day, every day. I will literally have jobs posted that say, this is an in-person position only. It'll be up for 2 weeks. I maybe get one candidate that fits and is like, yep, that's great. I'm good in person. I'll have 50 people call me and say, hey, can I do this remotely? No, you cannot, but I'll put you on the board with the other 200 people who want it. So that's definitely a trend to be aware of. But as far as different industries, healthcare, I don't think is slowing down at all. The people that I'm hiring just in schools, but they have opportunities everywhere. They're highly sought after. So I think healthcare is one that's always going to be a pretty safe bet. And, generically, you can say a lot of positions in different type of engineering. So many big companies are looking for different types of engineers. And I think that's something that you can pretty well count on.
Awesome. Great. All great tips. And Will, you alluded to this next question a little bit in talking about SQL and Python. So I'll start with you here. Are you seeing any common themes among recent college grads who have entered the workplace?
Yeah, so I'll kind of dovetail on, I guess, two different things that we're talking about with this. One is the tech aspect that yes, people are just like much more techified, for lack of a better word. Like students who are coming out of undergrad and master's programs are just extremely proficient in technology and using social media and things that a couple of generations ago like didn't exist. And they sort of like take it for granted. Like when I was talking with a group of young employees the other day, and we were talking about tape decks and discs that used to save information on, and they had no idea what I was talking about. Somebody said, I've heard about that before. And it was because it was in a manual that we hadn't updated in a long time. I said, what is that? And I said, well, it's a manual that's not been updated in probably 15 years. And it was just very interesting sort of hearing that. But then they're just running loops around us on social media stuff and analytics on websites, or just sort of pull through or click throughs on like media and engagement from like audiences and stuff. That's really where this generation can help kind of bring the existing kind of older workforce up to par and add value to a lot of the either industries or agencies or places that they're coming into. Something that I've seen lacking though in sort of commonly among recent graduates is because of COVID. It's because that we haven't been interacting like face to face or just with people. We've been like just sitting in offices or different kinds of rooms and engaging through through virtual platforms like this. Like, that's great, and it's really convenient. But when you get people in a room, there's like no social skills sometimes. There's a really like big disconnect. Like, people are on their phones or on their watches or on just different media. And having people come back to just very basic interaction skills is extremely important, because that's how you build rapport, and that's how you build like a really good relationship with folks at your agency or wherever you end up at in your company. And if you can't do that, you're going to have problems connecting with the older workforce that's there. And a lot of times those are the people who can give you really good mentoring advice, can help you step up, can give you opportunities in the workforce to grow and develop. And that's one of the things that's been just kind of difficult. Like, I schedule meetings with my staff, and I'm in the office at least once a week all the time. And it's a struggle to get people to come into my office. They want to still have virtual calls, even though we're like 2 or 3 doors down. Like, we're literally 15 feet away, and having a virtual conference, which just kind of defeats the purpose of being there. So I'll just get them out of their offices and just have them walk around and meet people, just sort of like the old fashioned way. So I think the common things to me would just be a little bit more present, and take that social media that you have, or these kind of like social digital skills, use them, but also kind of go back to what you learned in the fraternity in terms of like when you're rushing and how to interact with people. And when you're trying to like convince them to come onto your teams and stuff, those are skills that like you learned early on in undergrad that you can bring out into the professional world and completely take advantage of, because you're trained up to interact with people. You're trained up to like talk to them about what you're doing. When you're out doing like social events, when you're out doing philanthropic kind of drives and talking about the fraternity or the things that you're doing to raise money, like, these are really good skills that you can utilize that other people around you are not going to be quite as strong in. So kind of fall back on that training to the extent you can, because it's going to be really important as you move forward in your career.
I'll jump in here. I'm going to share one that a lot of you might not like to hear. And this is a common theme that I've been seeing for a couple of years now. I see a lot of undergrads coming out that don't have a degree necessarily in something very specific, jumping into the workforce with very high expectations of, I want to be able to have, this amount of time off. I want to be able to work from home this many days. I want to be able to be paid this much. And I think, this isn't just my career, but echoing a lot of my friends here who are small business owners. It's hard hiring in some regards, because I, as well as, a lot of my friends, get turned off of a lot of the recent graduates that we talk to and interview, because their expectations are, it's not, let's talk about my skills, let's talk about the job, as much as, well, I want to make this much, and I expect to be able to make this much. If I can't make this much, I'm not interested in the position. And a lot of them don't have the foresight to ask the questions and really investigate what can my earning potential be down the road once I actually start understanding what the job is. And I think it's a common maybe a fault of ego of people coming out of college. Hey, I just graduated. I had a great GPA. I was involved with this. Companies should want me. And in reality, I think a lot of new grads don't understand that no matter how good you are, no matter, what the great things you've done, you still don't understand their business, and you still have to learn from them. And take it in and kind of be a sponge. And you are an investment for that company. They are going to spend a lot of money on you, not just in your salary and your benefits, but in the time and training of their current employees. So understanding that, when you're asking for certain salaries, you have to understand that company is also just kind of using that as an investment, and they're going to be very careful about who they offer positions to. So when you're interviewing, you need to understand that and see what the potential is. Ask those questions as, where does this go? What is my career development? Not just kind of a, hey, what do you have to offer? And this is who I am. This is what I can do for your company. That has been just something I think that curve has really changed a lot in the last 3-4 years from undergrads kind of coming out, having more of that persona of this is me, you should be lucky to have me almost. So I would, my advice is to kind of take the more humble route and look at critically, where is this opportunity going to open doors for me within this company 2 years, 3 years down the road, and what are my earning potentials then?
Yeah, no, I definitely kind of agree with both Will and Robbie there. Definitely have to make sure that you have kind of realistic expectations of what is out there for you as an option, especially in such a competitive job market. As students who have been impacted by COVID, you do have some years where there's a gap in where you had the opportunities to gain experience. And so, you may be a little bit further behind kind of on that experience section, but, just kind of keeping in mind that humility will keep you sane during the job search and during actually kind of setting those expectations for yourself as soon as you get into that job market.
Definitely. Thank you all for sharing, and definitely some key pieces. And also, again, leans into this next piece that we have coming. So what can current undergrads do to improve their chances in the job market? Robbie, we'll start with you.
I would, I think Will kind of touched on some of this in the last question, but a lot of what I'd say recent grads can do is work on their soft skills, their hard skills and their soft skills. A lot of companies are doing a skills-based hiring, so that they are looking for, the critical thinkers. How can you show this potential employer, this is how I've been able to solve problems in the past. This is how I can think outside of the box. And they are sometimes, I would say, willing to go out and take that jump or that risk in hiring a new graduate if they can communicate well. And that is one of the things, like Will said, I think coming out of COVID and not being in person as much, that is something that new grads, unfortunately, are struggling with a little bit more. So if you can, kind of put yourself into the situations now, and there's a great opportunity in the fraternity. We meet, we have, our different officers, we have our different challenges, being able to step up into the roles and say, hey, I'm going to challenge you on this, or how can we do this better? Give yourself the opportunity to get in an uncomfortable position, to really test yourself. And then being able to step back and say, hey, here's what I accomplished. It helps give you that level of confidence, but it also gives you the ability to apply what you've learned from the fraternity, and at least be able to exercise, here are some of my skills to that potential employer. I think that, we're very lucky with the fraternity environment of being able to have things that arise, whether it's an issue of difference of opinions or, how an event goes, that we have that opportunity really on a weekly basis to do that. If we just if you step up and put yourself in there and really challenge yourself in the group to develop those skills. And I think that's, really one of the best ways that you can improve your chances of being able to appeal to a current or to an employer. So.
Go ahead, Will.
All right. So, yeah, I think a lot of that's really good advice. When you're an undergrad, you have a lot of free time. You have opportunities to develop skills that you're never going to have these chances later on in life. Things are going to get busy. Like, you're going to have a career, you're going to be on other sports teams, you're going to have families, you're going to be traveling, have kids, whatever it's going to be later. But in undergrad, you have this prime opportunity to really hone in on what you want to do and try things, fail, learn from it, and grow from that. So one of the things I think you can do is being a member of the fraternity, even if you're not involved in anything else on campus, is get involved as much as you can in different roles within the fraternity. It is a small business. It's a small business by all intents and purposes, and there are different roles within the fraternity that fit different kind of positions. So I was Queester for a little bit. So I did the pledge class president, and then I did Queester. So I learned about financing and different kinds of sort of investments that we would have, and then just bringing in dues, just collecting things, making sure people were paying on time, and then spending things on time on the other side when officers wanted to come and get funds for that. That's an extremely good role to learn a lot of really detail-oriented skills in. But I also realized I didn't want to go into accounting when I did that. I just wasn't good at it. And that's a good lesson to learn in terms of what you're good at and what you're maybe not as good at. And then later on, I was pro consul. So then I got the opportunity to kind of navigate and do like management more activity of like taking different people in different roles and just making sure that we're hitting deadlines, we're organizing things, we're working together, we're working the other fraternities or other sororities, other organizations at the university, and taking kind of a little bit of a different picture from a university perspective, from like a more holistic or bigger kind of perspective for the university, and not just like one role in kind of one group. Those skill sets are extremely useful. If you tell somebody, like, you don't have to tell them you're quaestor or that you're proconsul, they're not gonna have a clue what that is on the outside unless they're like in Greek organizations and they understand some of the translations. But if you tell them like you're the treasurer for your fraternity, or that you're the vice president and you basically were on the internal kind of business side of things, making sure everything ran smoothly, and you ran a budget of like $200,000 or $400,000 or whatever it is for that, and you had to have a balanced budget every single year. Those are skills that are extremely valuable that people don't get in undergrad in most cases. So what I would suggest is find those roles that you're really good at. Like if you want to be Rush Chair or Social Chair, or you want to be Magister, Magister is all about learning and educating. We have a complete division at my agency that does educational outreach for everyone at our agency. There are things that are completely transferable that you would get the opportunity at the fraternity to build those skills and to find out what you like to do, to maybe find a career path, and then also get the training for free while you have a lot of time and you have the ability to invest in that. So you can use this chance to kind of figure out where do you think you might be going, figure out what are those skills if you're looking them up on like different job searches, and here are like the main skills you want to do, and then kind of map those into the fraternity and figure, okay, what are places where I might be able to get those skill sets and work on them and kind of practice them. So when you go to apply for a job a few years later, then you can say, yeah, I did this for 2 years. I have experience in doing that. And you can speak about it if they actually ask you about it and try and find out, okay, how much you actually know about it. You can actually talk to them about difficult situations you ran into when people wouldn't pay their dues, or when you came to a party and you had to figure out how to deal with like people who were just unruly and how to like calm them down and just like separate them and stuff, or deal with like other organizations and working collaboratively with different groups across campus that may not have shared sort of the same goals in mind, but you had to figure out a common ground that you could work with. All those are really good things. So get involved in the fraternity, because it will, without even knowing, you're going to learn a lot of good things that'll be really helpful for you in your professional life later on.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of want to add on that seeking out any experience or any opportunity to learn is going to be valuable to you in the long run. And undergrad is a really easy time to do so, just because you have so many opportunities available to you within your undergrad institution, within the Sigma Chi fraternity. So just kind of going out there and kind of trying to push past that fear of failure, because the earlier you tackle that fear of failure, the more successful you can end up being, the more confident you'll end up being. And I think another thing that I want to really touch on is really utilizing networking. You already have a large network within Sigma Chi. If you're a part of any other organizations on campus, your university in and of itself, there are so many networks out there that you have the ability to reach into. And with that, since you're still in undergrad, go ahead and get those connections, make those conversations happen. That way you're utilizing, creating a network before you need your network, because you don't want to go out and start finding people to talk to when you're in the middle of your job applications and not getting that time to kind of develop rapport and trust within each other. And so going ahead and getting started on that networking process, joining LinkedIn and getting connected with groups on there, joining professional Facebook groups, talking to people at KTLW, really just kind of developing that so you have kind of professional connections to rely on or to help you within your career journey.
Awesome. Great. Appreciate y'all sharing that piece of advice, and we'll go ahead and shift to a new population here. And maybe for those who are looking for midlife career change, what advice do you all have for brothers looking for a change there?
One thing that I come across a lot as someone who will deal with different alumni who come and seek our services for career changes is you definitely want to make sure that you are getting your application materials reviewed. Just because the kind of expectations of what a resume looks like or the contents of a cover letter may look different than it did, 10, 15 years ago. There may be kind of some technological barriers or some differences in job industries or terminology. So kind of talking to people within the industry, seeking out advice from anyone who works in recruitment or HR, anyone who handles actual resumes, if you're not as familiar with kind of creating that to today's standard. Just making sure that you can market those skills because you've been in the workforce already, you've developed these skills, you are a qualified candidate. You just have to make sure that your application materials speaks that same truth.
I'll jump in. I've got two main things that I would suggest or kind of throw out there. One, from my experience, and this would go, most of the people that I'm working with now aren't changing. They're very specialized. But, even when I worked in the logistics industry and myself wasn't mid-career, but, several years into my career, I made a complete shift. I would say if you're going to make a complete career shift, it's a pretty scary thing to do. I think you really have to focus on what is important to you. What is going to give you fulfillment? Because most of the time when people are making a mid-career change, I think it's either just that industry is dying or they aren't fulfilled in their career and they need to find something that they're passionate about. So I would take the time to really sit down and give yourself the time alone to think about what is important to you, what is going to give your life fulfillment. If you're spending so many hours of your waking time at this job or at this career, you want it to be something that you're going to be happy or proud of, and figure out what that is. One, before you do anything else and start reaching out, because that will probably at least get you on the right track to begin looking at where you go and what companies you might want to work for. Look at their vision. What is this company striving to do? What is their purpose? Does it align with what I want to do and who I am? Second, I'm going to give a little bit of a plug to my industry here. Reach out to individuals who work there and ask them if they know about any recruiters that are, known, trusted professionals within the industry. If you're applying and just going through an HR department, you see a job posting and it's like, I'm interested. I think my skills could match that. I'd love an opportunity to try to sell myself. That's going to an HR manager. That's not going to the hiring manager. The hiring manager oftentimes is going to have a lot broader idea of what they're looking for and who they might hire. HR is looking, a lot of times they get it, check the boxes. Do they have this? They haven't worked in the industry? Pass. And your resume never makes it to the hiring manager. If you can find a trusted recruiter who has a reputation and relationship with that company, and you can have that conversation, build that, relationship with that recruiter is going to have that hiring manager's cell phone number, direct email. They're going to be sending applications, resumes directly to that hiring manager and be able to go to bat for you saying, hey, Will worked in, this industry. He is making a shift. Here are all of his skills. This is why I think you should have a conversation with him. And you basically have someone who's already a known trusted entity to that hiring manager going to bat for you.
Yeah, I'll mention one other thing on sort of the networking side. Use some of your fraternity brothers that you trust, and just get sort of like what we might call like a 360 review, or just kind of like a sort of like fresh feedback from people that you know. So that's things that I think are underrated or underutilized in this industry, where there's a few of us that have kept very close contact since undergrad. I was in I guess I lived for 4 years with one of my fraternity brothers, and then we were both in each other's weddings. Now we live in the same city. We always catch up, and there's a couple of other guys who were all like extremely close, and we use each other as sounding boards. And that's really good, because if I'm doing something really stupid, that like I'm just not doing the right thing, and I'm just not getting interviews, or I'm having a lot of trouble in work, the people who are going to be the most honest to you might be your brother or sister, or like a cousin for family members, or your fraternity brothers. To me, they've been just really good, just rocks when I need somebody to like help prop me up. But then also really good sounding boards when I need to run an idea off to somebody and say, hey, look, I'm thinking about applying for this job, or I'm thinking about going into my boss's office and asking them this, because I want to pitch an idea and see if I can get a couple more people to hire or something. And they'll say, well, why do you think your boss would want to do that? And then I'll have to use them. It's sort of this really nice way of having almost like a Shark Tank, that you can have the people that are just going to tear you up if you have a really bad idea, and be honest with you, because they've experienced sort of similar things to you. And there's that really good trust. So make sure when you have that network, you can lean into it, and you can really utilize it, not just for like getting out and finding jobs and connecting with people, but getting really good feedback on that resume and where you're weakest, and just be very open. So one of the things I remember fondly in undergrad was just chapter meetings, when we would have time where we'd go around and everyone would say something, and we would have to be silent and just listen and just take it in no matter what was said. And you just have to recognize that people had different opinions sometimes, if they were talking about something that was affecting you, or that you saw differently on. That's really good though, because that learns you that taught me and teaches other people how to receive feedback that can be critical, that can be really important. And that sometimes is some of the best things that can happen to you as you're making a midlife kind of career shift, is just getting that honest feedback, knowing how to take it, and then knowing how to act on it, and kind of take something out of it, and hopefully find a better path for you, something that you're passionate about and that you really want to go into.
Thank you all. That's all extremely helpful. And specifically talking about networking, you all touched on it at different points here in the conversation. And it sounds like networking is a very important part of that job search process, no matter where you are, undergraduate or making a mid-career change. And leveraging that maybe looks like a sounding board, or trying to figure out how you can use your skills to your advantage, or finding somebody you trust to be able to get your foot in the door. So definitely something to consider in thinking about if you are trying to make a change or break into an industry. Think about those people that you might have met in the past, or you're interested in getting to know, and go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off and go have that conversation. Go connect with them, because it's only forward they can help you go. And so continue to work on networking. And we've talked a lot about some positive experiences or ways to get in the industry, but to kind of mitigate some of those mistakes, can you all touch on what some of those common mistakes job seekers might make in that job search process, so we can kind of avoid those?
Yeah, I can kind of touch directly on my experience with college students kind of going out into their first real job search. Is a lot of companies putting their applications online and utilizing services such as LinkedIn or Indeed has made it really easy to go see a ton of jobs at once. And so students have this assumption that if they go and click easy apply on 10 applications in 10 minutes, that they have just applied to a bunch of jobs and they're making a lot of good progress. But what they're not doing is really focusing on the quality of their applications over the quantity. And so really kind of honing in to your application materials. So tailoring your resume and your cover letter. So kind of looking at the job description of the job you're interested in applying in, looking at the language that they're using, looking at the skills that they're looking for, and making sure you're articulating that on your own application materials. And then even on your cover letter, make sure you're doing research on the company so you can attest to what you're actually interested in about the organization. So making that application material specific is what's going to make you stand out, because it's going to show that you did your research. It's going to show that you're directly relating your experiences and your skills to the ones that they're looking for. And it's going to be the most bang for your buck in terms of what you're spending your energy on. The job search is already a pretty emotionally draining process, especially in times right now where our employers kind of possibly watching out for a recession. And so making sure that you're putting in the energy where you are going to see the most results. And so making sure that you are really tailoring your application materials, and then kind of furthering that by networking with people in that same industry or that same organization that you are interested in.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Braden. Tailoring a resume or an application, I recruit. I employ these therapists across the country. I get resumes every day. I only get a handful of applications every year where someone applies but has a cover letter that says, hey, I went on your website. This is what I saw. I like this about your company. What I'm trying to do and the move I'm trying to make aligns with, what your company's stated values are, or, this opportunity that you have to work in various areas. It's literally, I can count them on my hands, the number of people who actually go through and tailor a cover letter, or will write me a personal email after they have applied. And that stands out. That automatically tells me, hey, this person paid attention. They know what they were applying to. They actually are interested, and they took the initiative to also reach out to me and make sure that I knew they were interested. So it automatically puts them at the top of the stack. The other thing that I would say that people make mistakes in, if we're going on that in the process, when you're interviewing, people don't ask enough questions. They get blinded by the title, or maybe the offerings of the company, and some of the job description. Companies are trying to sell their company to you as well. Lots of times people get into a job, if they're unhappy, it's because they didn't really ask enough questions. They didn't dig deep enough to find out what that position is actually about. And my advice to everyone when they're going into an interview is, hey, you need to sell yourself. You need to talk about your skills and highlight how you're going to, benefit that company. But you need to also treat this interview as you are interviewing this company, because you're going to be spending your time, your, skills and working, to help move this company forward. But you need to make sure that it fits what you want to do. You need to ask the tough questions of, why is this position available? What happened to the last person? Don't be afraid to ask tough questions of the company, because it's going to get you the information that you need to know to say, hey, this company is aligned with and going in the direction that I want, or hey, maybe this company is having some struggles and maybe this isn't the best opportunity to go. It might not be the best future. But what it also does, I'm saying that don't be afraid, because it shows that hiring manager that you're also interested and you're engaged. If they can answer all of those questions and they know that you're really digging deep, that you're going to make a conscientious decision if that job is offered to you. It just shows that you're going to stand out among others if you are willing to ask the tough questions in an interview. And I know that is the number one thing across industries that I've worked in, recruiting and hiring in, that people are afraid that that's going to turn that, hiring manager or, HR manager off of you, thinking that you're going to be difficult, when in most cases it's the exact opposite.
Yeah, I don't even get applications to me unless people can get past HR. And the government, that's all it's asked if you can't follow directions. Sometimes I get applications that aren't complete, and those just go straight in the trash. Like I'm not going to even bother going through an application and taking time to review somebody, even if they have a 4.0 GPA, if they can't follow directions. Because in the government, like, I got to have people who can follow directions. We have lots of stuff we have to do. We have quick responses on things sometimes, maybe not as quick as in some of the private sector, but I have to have people that I know that can read the instructions and follow the instructions correctly. So I also look for details in resumes or in materials that are small details, because to me, it's important that you're actually reading what you're sending me. Otherwise, I'm not going to bother. Like, if you send me a cover letter and it's got the wrong name on it, you go in the trash. Like, I'm not even looking at your application if you have the wrong like company name in the cover letter. But also just attention to detail, like, do you have good punctuation? If you send some sort of a writing sample or something, does it actually make sense? Does it seem like it's a strong fit for you? And then I go through the others. Maybe you're doing this now, but with COVID, I find it very advantageous in sort of this new tech world where we can have multiple calls. So I'll do a shorter interview call actually now, screen down the initial set of folks, and then I do a follow-up one either with my team or even myself after that. Sometimes I'll do my team and then myself again. So I actually have multiple stages now, where I didn't always have that before, just because it's easy to get on Zoom or whatever other platform we're using. If it's the StreamYard or whatever we're doing to call with folks, it's very simple and not very costly to do that. And I use that to my advantage in seeing what people have done after we talk initially. So if we talk and we're chatting about the job, we're chatting about the organization and asking general questions, and then we come back a few days later and we're talking a little more specifically about what we would like a project that you would work on or something. If you don't have any questions, like Robbie was saying, you're not bringing anything like that's inquisitive, you're probably not going to be up at the top of the list or high up there. If you come back though and you've read the web page and you've read other things we've been working on, maybe reports or papers we've been putting out, or you've seen like a press release that I was in, you want to ask me about something that we were doing, that shows that you're actually trying and that this job has all of a sudden made it through your cuts, and then you now make it through our cuts. So just going that extra mile with small things like that can make a really big difference at having you stand out among the other applicants that might be competing at the same time.
This has been extremely helpful. I appreciate the three of your perspectives on everything we've been able to talk about so far. I'm coming in on our last question here, and it kind of ties all the themes together. So if you all don't mind, in the few minutes we have left, to talk about how brothers can talk about their Sigma Chi membership and experiences in a job interview setting.
Sure, I'll jump in and say that I mentioned it earlier, but to me, Sigma Chi is almost like running a small business. And what role that I played in terms of being the sort of vice president of a company and running different aspects of it. Look at the skills that you need in a job and just translate those. You've already got a lot of these things. So right now, a big thing in the industry is diversity, equity, inclusion, and then sometimes accessibility. It's DEI and then an A sometimes at the end. That maps out pretty well to the Sigma Chi Creed if you're talking about like different temperaments, talents, and convictions. Bringing in that diversity is not a hard thing for our brothers to talk about if you're thinking about your own chapters and what you try to do when you're rushing different people or you're trying to recruit people or getting involved with different projects on campus. So to me, I think the biggest thing that you can do to help yourself in the job interview process or finding jobs is just figuring out like things that you did in the fraternity. How do they actually match those bulleted points that you would see in a job ad? And it's not really that hard if you get a little creative talking about this in terms of, did you do like membership sales? Did you do recruitment? Did you do teaching or learning? Did you go above and beyond and do service activities that might help out with an organization and get involved in other extracurricular activities? All you have to do is just phrase it a little bit differently in sort of like a professional world kind of setting instead of how you might see it in the fraternity and like the roles we played. And you're going to have a lot of the things that people are looking for. You just have to figure out how to pitch it. So it sometimes may take a little bit more extra effort. But I think a lot of the experiences are going to be really valuable as you come forward if you can figure out how to just translate them.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree with Will. You have every opportunity within the fraternity to work in different capacities and be able to, sell your skills based on what you learned from the fraternity to any employer. The most important part for you is not going in and just expecting like that there's going to be a question of like, hey, what are your skills and then how can you do it? You need to think about, how can I interject these skills into an interview if it's not asked? Think about your actual process, whether it was recruitment chairman or magister, queester, of this is where I started, this is what I had, this was the end result because of the steps that I took, A, B, C, D, and be able to think ahead of time. This is how I'm going to explain it. If it's not asked, this is how I'm going to interject this type of training or skills that I have into a response to another question. I think that that's important to be able to, know your skills and be able to sell them, even if it's not the exact question that's asked. And you certainly have that from the fraternity experience. Lastly, I would add on, major point, if you want a lot of training and help in this, go to workshop. KTLW is specifically designed around this. And after all the curriculum at the end of, the 3-4 days, there is actually a portion that we go back and we talk about, here's the value add. Here's how to sell what you learned. Here's what you just learned. Here's how you applied it. Here's how you're going to put it into real world exercise. And then here's how you talk about what you just learned. So, it takes you right through everything, gives you the building blocks and teaches you how to sell those skills as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. One thing that I think is super helpful in kind of preparing for that interview process, and Paul's probably familiar with it as well, and probably knows what I'm going to say, is utilizing the STAR method. And so if you're not familiar, it's situation, task, action, and results. Basically, it's a way to kind of formulate a story of your experience to really kind of sell your skills and articulate it in a very succinct way. And so what it is kind of this example is, say you're queester for your fraternity. And so you, in the interview, say, I was queester for my fraternity. I had noticed that we were actually $2,000 in the red. And as a result, I needed to kind of go and look at all of our expenses, how much money we were bringing in to cover these expenses and what changes needed to be made. I created a plan that would increase our dues. You would be the most hated guy in the chapter, but sometimes it's necessary to increase our dues, and working with our chapter advisor and executive council's approval, we implemented the due increase, which resulted in a, I can't even remember any finance terms right now, just like excess of $5,000, which allowed us to sponsor a scholarship for a new brother, or something along those lines of what you did, what challenge you faced, what you did to overcome the challenge and the result of that. So just kind of preparing those situations in your head before an interview can really help you feel a lot less nervous going into it. You have some way to articulate the skills and experiences you have, and you kind of already know how to incorporate your fraternity experience, your internship experience, anything like that already into the conversation.
Great. Thank you all so much for all your insights and sharing the stories, the thoughts. Very interesting perspective as well. And I know we'll be able to take a lot of it and really implement that towards a successful job search. Leslie, I'll kick it back to you.
Yeah, thank you, Paul, Will, Braden, and Robbie, so much for everyone just sharing your insights tonight. I know I certainly feel like I learned a lot. I'm sure our attendees, feel the same as well. As this, is going to be recorded. It's going to be on the site, so I can imagine this recording being a really valuable resource for our members for years to come. So Sigma Chi is very lucky to have you. We are very grateful for your contributions. I also want to thank all of our attendees for engaging with us this evening. It's great to see where you're coming from, and apologize we couldn't get to all the questions in the chat feature, but we will continue to do these types of events moving forward. Speaking of engaging with us, you'll be receiving a feedback survey in your email shortly. So we appreciate any feedback you are able to give us. And then lastly, we do have a couple of other events coming up. Let me just make that a little bit bigger. So specifically for the class of 2023, our current seniors, on Saturday, April 8th at 12 p.m. Central Time, we have a panel about what does engaging in the fraternity look like after graduation. So please feel free to pass this along. We hope to see you all there. And then at the end of the month, and that is part of our Sigma Chi Today series. At the end of the month, we have one of our distinguished speaker series with alum Mike Freno talking about his work in organizational development and growing and transforming your own organization from the inside out. So thank you all very much for engaging with us, and we look forward to seeing you soon.